Hey Rajan.
Hey Tejas, good to have you.
Yep, good to see you.
Looks like we are live. We should get started.
Yeah, sure.
So Tejas, which city are you dialing in from for the audience?
Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, moved here last year. Loving it so far.
Yeah, I don't like the city. I've told you many times. It's very cold there.
Yeah, but it has its own advantages. The architecture is pretty amazing. It's
Yeah,
nicer, cleaner. So I love it here so far.
nice. So, all right. So we will jump into this LinkedIn Live. Thanks for taking the time. A lot of the founders that are dialing in are first-time founders from a SaaS perspective. They may have built businesses before, or this may be even their first startup. So today, what I would like to do is to talk to you about like how the social pilot journey grew. You're doing really well now. You started like many years ago. I want you to jump into that. I also want to talk about some myths. For instance, in the valley, there is this thinking that if you're not selling $10,000 plus ACV or even $5,000 plus ACV, then you cannot build a large business. Either you can build like consumer style business, or you can have to go to mid market and enterprise. You've busted some of those myths, like your ACV is of a certain size, your volume of customer is of a certain size, and you built it from India, and maybe like it is India's sweet spot in terms of the type of business that you have built. So I would like to double click and spend a little bit time on those aspects. But why don't we get started with giving the audience a little bit about what led you to start Social Pilot, you and Jimit to start Social Pilot. And I also want you to touch a little bit upon the the journey before that in you doing the services company before this.
Absolutely. So I went to B school in India. Did the typical journey of joining a consulting team within an IT services company after B school. And I kind of moved to the US, spent some time here doing financial consulting advisory for Fortune 50 clients. That was my part of the journey. My co-founder Jimit, he used to kind of run a full service agency for e-commerce and mobile app development, and he kind of helped them with creating their website, e-commerce stores, mobile apps, and then to a certain extent, certain marketing as well. So that's the kind of background that we have. We kind of know each other for 23 years now. We met in college back in 2000, and we've been in touch ever since then. In fact, I pushed him to start his own agency in 2007. That's how we've been kind of in touch since then, on and off, right? In 2014, I used to kind of hang out at his place starting 2012 very often. And then he kind of always mentioned about the marketing challenges that his customers had, right? Since he did a lot of e-commerce store development, more than 200, he kind of saw that the customers don't know how to market on social media. Social media was pretty growing back in 2012, 2013. It wasn't new, but it was.
Just which city was this? I would like for the audience to know which city was this.
This was in Ahmedabad. I used to visit Ahmedabad frequently. I kind of lived in US, but then for some time I kind of did a longer stay in Ahmedabad to kind of figure out, explore what's happening, what's not happening. So I had my entrepreneurial bug kind of hit me then, and I said, why don't we kind of explore something in Ahmedabad? So yeah, this was in Ahmedabad. Jimit was in Ahmedabad. I was in Ahmedabad. We both are basically from Ahmedabad, so that's where kind of jammed up. I used to hang out at his agency pretty often, helped him with some clients, some sales and stuff here and there, non-commercial as a friend. And then we kind of explored, what can we do together, etc., etc. And then he kind of came up with this idea that, hey, you know what? I have a lot of e-commerce clients and they have issues in marketing. Social media is a weak spot. Why don't we create a solution that kind of connects e-commerce stores to social media platforms? And we said, yeah, that's a great idea, right? And we kind of discussed this level. 2 weeks later, he's like, hey, you know what? We discussed about that idea. I have the product ready. I'm like, what? Really? Yeah. And he kind of actually had like a bunch of screens together, which did like social media publishing, listening and stuff like that. And I was like, man, this is fast. But then it was also a lot of things. Yeah. One product doing too many things for too many people at the same time. We said, let's kind of take it slow. Let's kind of focus on one problem at a time. Let's not build the entire world on day one. And hence we decided to kind of focus on publishing for e-commerce guys. So e-commerce people can connect their stores and connect their social media and publish from e-commerce their SKUs directly to social media. That was the basic concept that kind of we came up with in 2014.
This was in 2014.
This was in 2014. That's right.
Got it. And from then, what happened from 2014 onwards, and what was the next key inflection point for you from then? What were your first 3 customers? Where did your first 10 customers come from? What was your first important revenue milestone?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so initial focus was on e-commerce people. He had a rooster of Jimmy had a rooster of like 200 clients, right? And we kind of
Are
got
these
our first,
India-based clients or global
or
clients?
all US based, all global. So first 3 customers came from his agency clients, and they kind of started using the product. Back in the day, our pricing were pretty laughable as well. We were starting at like $0, and the most expensive plan was $9.99, right? And then there was a plan for $4.99. And when the first 3 customers signed up, we were like super happy that now I'm making like $15 a month, and that's pretty amazing, right? Point to be noted: when we started, we didn't know the difference between revenue and MRR, and then we didn't know this concept called churn, right? Because we are typical Gujaratis, and for Gujaratis, it's a revenue that matters. How much money are you getting in the bank, right? So that's what matters. So we were like non-SaaS background, didn't know a lot of things, but it was super fun. The reason why we kind of jammed it together was it was fun working together, even today, and that's the reason I think we kind of enjoyed doing it. From there, in 2014, we built up all the e-commerce integrations. By mid of 2015, we had integrations with OpenCart, Magento, Etsy, Amazon, eBay, etc. So we could kind of take SKUs from those stores and publish it on social media. Uh, that's where we kind of were in 2015.
How did you
And
get these first 3 customers, first 10 customers, when you are from Ahmedabad and you said you had global customers?
yeah, so as I mentioned, Jimit had a agency which had, you know, 200 customers in the past. He had built e-commerce stores for 200 customers. We got our first 3 customers from that pool. So we had this unfair advantage of having, past relationship with some customers. So that kind of helped us get some customers. And then obviously we started, doing a lot of SEO and content marketing. And to a certain extent, a couple of affiliates picked up our site, and they kind of did a deep dive and they did a review and they kind of recommended, because we had a very nascent affiliate program as well. And that's how we got more customers. And once the affiliate ecosystem is such that once an affiliate picks up, other affiliates watching him or her, they pick up the product as well, and then that kind of multiplies. So all you need is like top 10 affiliates kind of vouching for you, and then that kind of grows pretty fast.
What was your biggest next revenue milestone that you felt happy about?
Uh, we were super happy when we hit, I think, $10,000 in MRR. I think that was in, I believe, 2016. But we felt we were onto something. Till then, it
So
was
it took
all.
you
Sorry, go ahead, please.
it took you 2 years to get there, from the
It
time where
took
you
us
started with the first screens that you saw to
correct.
get there. And
It
while
took
you
us two
had this
years.
unfair advantage of like getting your agency customers and then getting affiliates to sort of back you up.
Yeah. And there's a reason to that. The reason is, while we were focused on e-commerce, people who were using SocialPilot were not connecting their e-commerce stores. They were just focused on social media publishing. And we realized this in late 2015, early 2016. And then we're like, if nobody's like focused on e-commerce part, or only like a few customers are focused on e-commerce part, why even invest there, right? Why not just go to the social media publishing part and like build out that part? So that's when we kind of pivoted in mid of 2016, saying not focus on e-commerce, we'll focus on just social media publishing for the main product, that is SocialPilot. And for the e-commerce connections that we built out, we spun off a new product called Mento. back in 2016, and we said that product will kind of be e-commerce plus social media. But so let SocialPilot focus only on the social media part. So that pivot kind of took us some time, and we realized that social media publishing is what is working.
So you said, your pricing back then was laughable. We've had this session multiple times within Upeka as well. You've come and shared your experiences with others. What is your pricing now, and what is the change? What is the difference? Walk me through that.
From from a product perspective, there's not a lot of difference in terms of you building what we've been building, right? But I think back in the day, we weren't too sure if anybody would want to buy the product, right? So how do you kind of enter the market if you already have big competitors like Hootsuite and Buffer, uh, and Sprout Social, etc. And those are respectable competitors; they are doing pretty good, right? But how to kind of break into that market? So the only strategy we knew was, hey, if we kind of underprice them, then people will kind of naturally flock to us because we are cheaper and they don't have to think twice about switching, which
That's
effectively
the
was a
first
wrong
outcome.
strategy.
Yeah, but the first thing that comes to mind, right? If we make it cheaper, then people
Yeah.
will come to us.
And trust me, it comes with its own baggage, because when you kind of brand yourself as a cheap competitor, people think of you as a cheap knockoff, right? And nobody wants a cheap knockoff of a great product, right? People want a great product at a valuable price. They don't want a cheap knockoff. So mistake number one, we positioned ourselves as a cheap competitor. If we were to do it again, I wouldn't do that. Even though the pricing might be $4, $5 to start with, I would kind of brand it as a value based product and not like a cheap knockoff.
Got it. And
Yeah.
what's the pricing evolved to now?
It's $30 now. So the starting price is $30. It goes up to $200. So we have the same tiers, 30, 50, 100, 200. And surprisingly, it's working well.
So your ACV is like, when you say 200 and you multiply it by 12, it is $2,400, right?
Yeah.
So to get to $1 million, get to $10 million, like, beyond, it means that you need to have a lot of customers. So how did you go about getting a lot of customers? Your initial unfair advantage turned out to be that, like, it's not as much of an unfair advantage. You have to pivot. So it looks like you had
Yeah.
to like, gain all the other type of customers which you didn't have in your rooster already. How did you go about getting a lot of these thousands of customers
So
while being in
our
Ahmedabad?
yeah, yeah, interesting. Our marketing strategy has always been inbound, SEO and content. That's what our marketing strategy has been from the start. And till there, that is a marketing strategy. Content takes time, right? It doesn't kind of give you results right on day one, right? It takes a year to kind of have a great blog repository, and then you constantly do work on SEO and keywords, and ensure that your site is up to date. This technical SEO part of it, etc. My co-founder Jimit is pretty awesome at content and SEO, and that kind of helped us, uh, get to multiple customers in 2016 at $10,000 of revenue. Uh, the the lesson here is consistency is the key. Jimit ensured that we kind of publish things on a regular schedule, consistently, which is highly relevant to our customers, and that is the reason we kind of grew to 10K revenue in 2016.
So back in 2016, there wasn't too much competition, right? There weren't enough SaaS companies in India. There weren't enough SaaS companies in the world. Back then, people used to talk about 100 million ARR as a club, saying only 5 or 7 companies have gotten there. So there was little competition on content and SEO. But today in 2023, there is a lot of competition there. So if anybody were to like, adopt an inbound strategy and go after, like, smaller ticket size ACV and do it from India, from a global market perspective, what would you do now? If you were to do the same thing again in 2023, what would you do now?
I would still focus on SEO and content because it's a long-term strategy. It's not going to work on in year one, but at the same time, I would also focus on other channels, right? If you have money, why not figure out if there's some paid marketing that works? It doesn't have to be Google Ads. There are multiple avenues of paid marketing. If your product is something that the affiliates love to sell, why not kind of have an affiliate strategy? in place. If you can kind of focus only on brand building, it takes time as well. But branding could be a great strategy as well. I want to point out Rand Fishkin, right? Rand Fishkin is like the god of SEO. When he kind of started his second product, Spark Toro, SEO was not his strategy, right? His strategy was branding. His strategy was giving content for free on LinkedIn, right? He says it's a no-click content, meaning it's not like a clickbait to kind of his blog or whatever, right? It's like branding himself, branding the organization, and then building an audience based out of that. It takes time, but it surprisingly works for him. He also has his own personal brand, but at the same time, SEO and content is non-negotiable. You got to do it because long term it's super important. At the same time, start exploring other channels. Stick to one or two channels or three channels at the max, but really kind of go deep, experiment, and figure out what's working there.
Right. So you said if you have money, you were 100% bootstrap, right? You didn't raise funds, right? So why was that choice? And you said now if you have money, then you can do this. Now, if you were to do this again, would you raise money now to do this?
So bootstrapping was not a choice. We tried raising some funds back in the day in 2014, but nobody would give us money. So we said, hey, what the hell, right? The advantage that we had was Jimit was already running an agency, right? So he had a set of developers and then a couple of people in content, right? So in a way, we had inherited a team. We had grandfathered a team of developers in Ahmedabad, super low cost resources, which worked out well in our favor. We didn't have to burn a lot of money back in the day. If we were to do it again, would we raise money? Depends, right? Back in the day, we didn't even know what to do with the money. Like if somebody gave us $1 million, we would not know what would we do with the money, right? Now we know that hey, if we have $1 million to start with, then we know that in 1.5 years we go to be somewhere else in terms of hiring, in terms of product development, in terms of marketing. So now we know how to use the funds. Back in the day, we did not. So given a choice, would we bootstrap again or would we raise money? Maybe we might raise money, high level.
Does the market right now force you to raise money to build the brand? Because one of the arguments that I keep hearing of late is oh, you know what, like the market is crowded, and for you to actually do this, you have to stand out, and you need to build a brand, and brand needs money. But what I heard you say is that in SEO and content is still non-negotiable, right? And brand, the ways Rand Fishkin is doing is he's not pouring a lot of money. He's just building a personal brand, and he's making sure that the content is like brand-led content and not really like clickbait content, right? So do you have thoughts on like you need money to build brand if you were to do it again now?
I don't think necessarily money is required for brand building. What is required is consistency, right? On one channel or a couple channels. That's what a lot of people miss out. People think that hey, because this is shiny, I got to jump there and do that, and then do something else. For example, getting on page one of or rank one of Product Hunt does not kind of give a lot of credibility later on, right? It's like a spike. But if you do, for example, LinkedIn content consistently, if you do, let's say, Instagram content consistently, then that kind of gives you an opportunity to develop the brand without a lot of money. As I mentioned, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Pouring in money is not going to build your brand overnight as well. So brand building is more of consistency and quality rather than a function of money.
From 2016, how long did it take for you to get to $1 million?
I think we hit $1 million in 2018, but obviously the factor that kind of helped us was joining Upeka. In 2017, we joined Upeka, and that's when we kind of realized what SaaS is. Right, we were running like a Lala company back in the day. Then we kind of transitioned to SaaS, and that gave us clarity in terms of infrastructure for how to kind of think about revenue, how to think about churn, how to think about customers, things to do, things not to do, etc. So the monumental part was like doing the OPECA program. That's when we kind of really got a push.
Got it. So, like within Upeka, I think you're one of the fastest company to hit $1 million with less than 20 months from where you started, like 10K to 83K. What were three top levers, right, according to you, right, that helped you in making that shift? And I offer some commentary later after you cover these key levers.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, One of the most important aspect is talking to customers, right? We didn't know who we were building for. We were building for anybody and everybody back in the day. Like whoever paid us were the customers. We didn't have this concept of ICP, right? Uh, we didn't have this concept that yeah, this is something that we want to, these customers are something we want to go after. So Upeka kind of, encouraged us to talk to customers and understand, what is the problem we're solving for them, who are the right fit customers, etc. So that kind of was one of the most important aspects. And even till date, both Jimit and I, we kind of physically meet customers here in the US. He comes in twice a year to kind of meet customers. We kind of do that road trip across the US and meet customers in person. Our product team kind of talks to a lot of customers as well. So talking to customers, one of the major factors that kind of helped us change. The second factor was doubling the pricing. So in one of the first sessions of Upeka, Prasanna kind of forced us to double the prices. He said, if you don't double the pricing tonight, you're not going anywhere, right? And that was the ultimatum. And we were like really scared as to, hey, if we double the pricing, the revenues are going to drop, people are going to go away, we're going to go bankrupt, we'll have to close down, what the hell, right? And we kind of trusted him. We doubled the pricing. Guess what? Our revenue started growing faster, right? So, and then we doubled again. So that was the second most important thing. And the third most important thing was actually learning SaaS, right? What exactly SaaS is like, how to think about recurring revenue, how to think about churn, how to tackle churn, how to kind of look into customers and churn and how to correlate what is working, what is not working. So those are the three important aspects that we learned in Upeka that kind of helped us transition from a traditional company to a really good SaaS org. And
Yeah.
we're still learning. It's not the end of world. We don't know everything. We're still learning.
Right. So this pricing point is so critical, right? So I often talk to even the current cohort founders and then say, and I like, refer to a lot of folks to the statement that you made, it given an internal talk, right? Where he said, yeah, we doubled the pricing, but, the biggest thing that was from a pricing perspective was the fear. There's always this fear of increasing the pricing, right? And if you increase the price, then, the existing customers that are there, will they go away? Right. And that fear is what comes in between. It's not about like, people don't know about pricing frameworks. There are like tons of written material on the internet on how to think about pricing, but it is overcoming that fear of pricing is the first important thing that happens. And I have actually worked with two companies very similar to SocialPilot before 2018, right? And both of them, they built good products. One was actually building something very close to Buffer, another was like building something like SocialPilot, but focused on a specific marketplace. But they were very afraid of increasing the pricing, and they did not increase the pricing, right? So they had to actually then get to about 300 500 customers, but the pricing was still the same, like $5 $10. And because like Buffer was anchored around that, and therefore they had to meet a different fate. So in my mind, like the pricing lever, like when I compare between the two other startups and then I see SocialPilot's journey, that pricing lever was very very important. And in that, like the fear of pricing, overcoming that fear of pricing was the most important thing to overcome. After that, the frameworks, you apply the framework, and then you kind of move forward. And of course, in like when you work with smaller ACVs, then controlling the churn becomes important, right? So I remember our conversations used to be focused on saying, okay, like are we increasing the pricing and are we focusing on the churn? And how is the churn reducing from 30% to 25% and to lesser? So those two variables are very very critical for a company which is focusing on smaller ACV, looking at global markets, and then trying to get to the $1 million. So those two parameters are very very important. Did you have Indian customers, and how do
We
you dealt with? I mean, how did you engage with Indian customers?
we had a few Indian customers, but we treated them like we treat the US customers. There is no INR pricing; it's all US dollars pricing. We
If they
don't
ask you to come to your office to meet them and give the product,
that that
did you
that,
have
that
any
doesn't work.
things like that?
Yeah, we had a good we had a good friend who kind of actually wanted to be a customer. He wanted the sales guy, he wanted the customer success guy to go to his office teach him how it works, and do a couple of things. He said that's not happening. We treat all customers equally and fairly. If I start giving you special service, then why should I put the US customers at a disadvantage, right? But in SaaS, you can't afford to have people go in like such low ACV. You can't afford to have people go to the individual places and kind of treat them in a special manner, right? Although all customers are important, you got to have what you can afford.
So if they say that no, you have to come, otherwise we won't purchase you, then what do you do?
We'll have to let them go. You can't help it. So you got to make the choice, right?
Right, folks. So if you have questions, please type them on the comments. Then I'll pull it out for Tejas to answer. If you have questions about how to go global, like how to actually scale, if you have any questions related to that, then please feel free to type it on the comment section. So after about 1 million, Tejas, like what were some of your key challenges in terms of growth, right? Where did you get stuck? And I know in between we had COVID brought its own challenges, but what would you say looking back, after you crossed the 2018 timeframe, in 2019 and 2020, what were some of the key challenges that you were facing in terms of growth of business?
So one of the key challenges was we did not have access to Instagram API. Uh, that was released in 2018, and we were struggling to get access to that, right? We didn't have any reach or network within Facebook, Instagram ecosystem. They kind of favored bigger companies like Hootsuite and Sprout Social, etc., and Buffer, right? And we were stuck without the access. And Instagram was picking up back in 2018. It was like really hot. Everybody wanted to publish on Instagram. That was one of the biggest challenges. Thankfully, Facebook opened it up in 2020, and we kind of got access to it, and that kind of also helped us grow. That was one key challenge. The second key challenge was around hiring. We didn't really understand the importance of hiring early on. We didn't. Our first real hire was a customer success person back in 2016, 17. And then we didn't have like product folks for quite some time. We didn't have senior folks for quite some time. Our philosophy was to hire junior folks and interns and then kind of grow them in the organization, which works great to a certain extent. But then as you grow, you want people who are experienced, who've been there, done that, and who can take things off your plate. Neither my co-founder Jimit nor I, we kind of had that concept in mind really, scribbled in. So we kind of continued hiring juniors.
And Ahmedabad poses its own challenge, right, in terms of hiring senior folks from a
Yeah,
SaaS talent perspective.
yeah. We were not remote back in the day. We wanted people to come to the office, and that also didn't work out really well. In fact, we were like a 6 day a week company for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks we used to do 5 days a week. And then we tried hiring one guy for SEO, and he said, "I'll come to the office only if it's 5 days a week." And hence we kind of changed our policy to 5 days a week, which was pretty unheard of in Ahmedabad back in the day. But Ahmedabad has its own challenges in terms of finding people. Thankfully, due to COVID, now everything is remote, so that helps.
So congratulations on being recognized by GPTW, Great Place to Work. These are usually like only awarded to like large companies. I know at Intuit we used to place a lot of emphasis on GPTW. How did that journey start? What led GPTW to recognize you as a great place to work? While you said you faced this challenge in 2018-19 that you were not able to hire and you're not finding a lot of good talent, and now you're recognized as GPTW. So what led to that?
We went remote partially in 2019, and then 2020 COVID forced us to go fully remote for some time. We started hiring elsewhere too in India, like Bangalore, Kerala, Delhi, Bombay, etc. And we are focused on hiring quality people. Uh, One of the initiatives then we wanted to kind of was to see internally how are we doing from a people perspective, right? The certification was not just a badge of honor to show it to the world, but to see internally if we are doing the right things, if people are really happy. We wanted the independent evaluation of that, right? What better agency to evaluate than the Great Place to Work agency, right? So we said, why don't you kind of just evaluate us and really see if we are doing anything right or anything wrong. We want some feedback and we want to really improve. And they kind of evaluated. They said, hey, you guys are doing a lot of things right. Here's a certification, and that worked out well. So it was more of an internal inquiry as to are we doing things right.
What is the size of the team, and where are they spread out?
I think we're currently close to 85, 90 people.
Oh wow,
50%, 50% of them are in India, are in Ahmedabad. 50% of them are remote. So that's the breakup.
got it. So Instagram API was one key challenge from a growth perspective of the business. Then like having a scalable team, or like building a better organization was another one. So what are some other levers that were responsible for you to unlock growth after that?
So one of the factors that we once the Instagram API came into picture, then we realized. So going back, right, the conversations that we had, Rajan, back in the day was, churn is super important. Churn is something that we go focus on, right? And our focus has continuously been on reducing churn, and reducing churn is basically improving retention. And improving retention is a factor of is a formula consisting of multiple factors, right? Great activation, great habit formation, great product, and then decent pricing. We've been kind of continuously working on all those four aspects for quite some time. We also realized that we want to focus on two ICPs, SMBs and agencies. And we said we'll not focus on freelancers or individual customers who have like one or two accounts. Maybe offer is a better place for them. We'll not focus on enterprise customers who have like super complex workflows, who have like super complex compliance requirements and stuff. Maybe Sprinkler is a better place for them. So one of the major factors of growth was focusing on the ICP, that's agency and SMBs, and then ensuring that we continuously work on churn and not let that metric fall under. So those were like the levers of growth that we kind of focused on. But at the same time, SEO and content, it's like a snowballing effect, right? So from 2014 to 2020, we had like a very mature SEO practice. Uh, all credits to the marketing team and Jimit for being consistent at that. And that helped us grow pretty fast as well. That kind of improved our branding too. All those factors kind of come into picture.
So Sumesh is asking that yes, you had agency customers, right? But what is the share of business between agencies and direct customers?
Currently, I think 40 to 45% customers are agency customers, and then 55% customers are direct customers.
Got it.
And this
So
is evolved over time.
right, Monish Katre from Profit Books, he's asking which GTM worked best for your product, or like has the GTM evolved over a period of time?
Our go-to-market always has been, content and SEO. It has not evolved over time. We are still strong on content and SEO. In fact, 85% customers still come through content and SEO. That's been our take right from day one, and it's still working out. We
Like,
are
was there
experimenting on other aspects. Yeah,
any
please go
other
ahead.
channel, any other like go-to-market experiments that you're running?
We run continuous experiments on paid ads, on affiliate, on branding. Again, branding is a long-term exercise that we kind of continuously do. But our primary GTM has been, content and SEO.
Right. So, if you were to reflect back on your last almost like a decade-long journey, right? What are mistakes that you would avoid now? Right? What are the things that you would do differently? I'm sure some of the aspects that you shared, but if you were to frame it in terms of these are mistakes that I will not repeat if I were to run the business again, that run our build a
Yeah,
SaaS business again, what would that be?
really focusing on ICP, understanding for what kind of customers we're building the product for. It can't be for everybody. It has to be for one or two customer types. One is the best case scenario. Maybe two ICPs is a stretch, but that's what I would kind of focus on right at the start. Uh, Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but the idea initially in the first 6 months, 1 year has to be figuring out what is the use case we are solving for and what is the customer segment that we're solving for. Initial focus has to be on that, right? Once you figure that out, that's when you can kind of go all in and build the product out pretty fast. The second and most important aspect is not branding yourself as a cheap knockoff, right? Uh, that baggage is very difficult to shed. So don't focus on like selling items for cheap. Uh, Price it as a value-based pricing. That is super important as well. Uh, don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody is doing something great, take that as a base and improve on that. Uh, we all want to be category leaders and create new categories and stuff. A lot of times, it's the idea of creating a category that that excites founders more than actually, the task of creating categories. It's like bring it down from first principle thinking, right? Solve a problem. Don't kind of get hung on this fancy keywords and buzzwords. Uh, don't uh, don't kind of rush into establishing various corporate structures and stuff, right? Talk to people who've been there, done that. Avoid mistakes of compliance and stuff. Do it in the right manner. We did like a couple of these rounds of creating an India entity and then a subsidiary and stuff like that, and then finally now we're in a better place. But don't rush doing that. That's super helpful.
Right. So I'm going to sort of double click on the last point that you said about structuring and don't reinvent the wheel. One of the things that founders often struggle with, right? I'm sure, like, you also struggle with this, is that you get all this type of advice. You talk to one person who would say that, create India subsidiary, global subsidiary. You talk to one person, say that he will say that do content, do GTM like this, like outbound is the only thing that will work. So when you get advice, right, how do you parse this advice? Right? How do you decide what advice to take? How to actually make sense of that advice? Because, like, or like how, as Naval has said, right, talk to the entire world, all advice will cancel to zero. And every founder deals with a version of that. How did you do it? Right? How do you have, like, certain type of advice that you like deal with a certain way, and a certain type of advice that you just deal differently?
So, Jimit, and my principles are listen to everyone and do what you think is right, right? And then how do you determine what is right, what is wrong? So one, if somebody told us to kind of set up like a super awesome sales team and go after large enterprise customers, and that'll kind of get you to $100 million, that's a great advice, right? Are we able to do that? Maybe not at this stage, right? So we'll kind of park it and not follow that. If somebody told us that, hey, tactically do this, and that'll improve your SEO, that's something that we can do, right? So one, are we capable of even kind of executing what they're asking for, right? Or are we going in on a exotic mission to kind of accomplish something which is out of our reach, right? So knowing ourselves and our limitations is super important to kind of understand what advice helps, what doesn't help. And second, listening to people who've been there, done that, right? And then understanding what scenarios or what circumstances did they do it, right? We started with SEO and content in 2014, as you rightly mentioned earlier. It's not the same market today, right? It's super crowded. If you do at the same pace, would it yield the same results? No, absolutely not, right? So that we have to be cognizant about, and then think about it from a perspective that, yeah, it was relevant at that point in time. Is it relevant today? Maybe not. So you got to filter out from relevancy, the source, obviously, then understanding your strengths and limitations, whether that's doable or not doable. That's how we kind of try and filter out advices.
Have you been in this advice confusion before, or, like, has this framework helped you? Whenever you've been in an advice confusion of two conflicting advice came to you, how did you deal with it?
We go to the third person and ask for ask for questions and answers, right? For example, we reach out to you and Prasanna and Shaker for a lot of inputs, and then we kind of then get a different perspective of items. Uh, the framework develops over time. In in a moment, if you are like in a if you're coming from a spot of weakness, then all advice sounds good, right? If you're coming from a position of strength, then you are in the position to choose which advice to act or not. But if you're in a position of weakness, then you have to be super careful as to what to follow, because it can lead to like irreversible damages.
Damages.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So, Tejas, is there anything that I should have asked in our discussion right now that I didn't ask, and you want to talk about that?
Mistakes in hiring.
Hmm. Yeah, let's
uh,
talk about mistakes in hiring. Yeah, your favorite topic.
so for quite some time we didn't hire. senior resources. I think it's super important to kind of hire decent people who've been there, done that, right? And in order to hire them, you got to have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve, and then people have to actually come, together for that vision and the mission. Uh, People are like really smart. You can't just BS them and sell them a vision which does not exist in your head. They'll get pretty quickly. But you got to really have a vision and a mission as to what you're trying to accomplish, and then get good people along. Try and hire people smarter than you are, because otherwise you're just hiring minions who will do what you want them to do, right? That doesn't add value. uh, One of the favorite topics that Rajan, you and I discuss is how do we free up our time, right? And that's super important. Like founders want to do everything all at once by themselves. They want to be super cheap, and that's okay to start with. But as soon as you can afford to hire people and offload some of the tasks, you should do that. And then
Remove
hiring
the
for
$5
fitment.
tasks, right? Remove the
Remove
$5
remove
tasks.
the $5 $10 tasks. Don't try and do everything. Don't try and book your own tickets, and don't try and do research for a hotel to save 200 rupees. If you're visiting Bangalore, it's just not worth the time. And you don't realize it till the time has passed, right? One of the favorite things in hiring is hiring for fitment. I mean, you'll get a rock star, and it might not be a great culture fit, and you still want to hire him or her because you think he'll do magic, but it doesn't work out. If culture fit is not there, it doesn't work out, and it doesn't have to be like super duper culture fit. You got to see whether the person aligns to your basic principles and basic values. That's very important. One of the favorite things that Jimmy talks about is speed. And he's the guy that if you ask him to do something today, if he buys into it, he'll do it, this evening, not even tomorrow, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's super important for a lot of startups. Agility, right? If you can't move fast, then what is the advantage of having a small team? Right? You might as well be a corporation or an enterprise and then move in 6 months, and then world would have changed.
Right.
So agility is super important as well. Other things that I kind of super like about my team is talking to customers. Everybody has to talk to customers, man. If you're not talking to customers, you're not building for customers. You're building it for yourself. Right? People limit customers to just founders and maybe sales folks and customer support guys, but have the product team talk to them. Have the engineering team talk to them, and then see the sparkle in their eyes in terms of oh yeah, this is how customers are using it. This is super relevant and super helpful. So that's some of the things that I kind of
And
really.
it is important to build that in the culture, right? I mean, the culture should sort of encourage people in the engineering team, product team, who typically don't interface with customers, to be in touch with customers.
Absolutely. And if the engineers feel, slightly reserved, like, hey, we don't want to talk to customers, at least have them sit in the sales calls or customer support calls, right? They can be listeners, but active listeners, and, take notes and then explain the problem back to the internal team as to what the customers are trying to see. It really kind of adds a lot of perspective, because a lot of times, the engineering team is building for founder's vision. Unless the founder has a vision which is aligned to what the customers need, you're just trying to make your founder happy. Don't do that, right? Build for the customers. They are the ones paying the bill. So that is super important in the team as well.
Awesome. Tejas, thank you so much for that wonderful jog down the memory lane, and like refreshing on so many of our past moments together. And along with that, for the excellent actionable tips that you have shared with the audience. Thank you again
Always a
for taking
pleasure.
the time.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure. And talk to you soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodbye.
So, folks, we will sign off. Thanks for tuning in, and till we meet you in another LinkedIn Live. See you have a great evening. Bye bye.